Hello everyone, Ben here and welcome back to the channel. I know from the comments I receive that a lot of you watch my videos are relatively new to the sim racing world, and so in many ways am I. So today I wanted to talk a bit about how I think I've developed as a sim racer and how I've adapted the way I go racing online based on what I've learned over the last 9 months. And to do that, we'll look back at a bunch of unseen footage from my early races, some dating back from before the Broca sim racing even existed. Now, a big disclaimer to begin with. I am not very quick. You won't find the secret to being a sim racing alien in this video. I'm a time-pressed dad who enjoys racing online, but who does not have time to practice very much. And yet I've found over time, my results have gone from erratic to generally quite good, with the occasional really good finish. Partially that's because my skills with the wheel and pedals have gotten better, but mostly I think it's because my racecraft and my mindset have each improved. Before I explain how, if you enjoy the video or if you find it in any way useful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of the other races and guides we've got coming up. Race Room ranked races were one of my very first experiences with online racing, and they were definitely the most intimidating. Let's take a look at replay footage from my very first race back in October 2020. It was a BMW Cup Car rookie server. I started mid-pack and I was genuinely terrified. And why wouldn't I be? Look at how this opening lap unfolds. It's less a racing sim and more a survival horror game. Not only was I trying to avoid making mistakes, but there's cars flying off left, right and centre. And if, like me, you came to sim racing from other racing titles, you'll likely bring with you some bad habits. In particular, the fact that many of those titles actively encourage you to restart the race until you win, or use a flashback button or something similar to rewind and erase mistakes. In online racing, these crutches don't exist, and it can feel pretty frightening at first. And it turns out, if you're not used to racing online, 15 minutes can also feel like quite a long time to keep your concentration and withstand this pressure. Especially when deep down, all you really want to do is get to the end of the race in one piece. The more anxious of that you are, inevitably mistakes will creep in, as they did here. All of which left me even more shaken and stirred than I had been before I begun. And I remember from those early days just how long mistakes would stay with me, both within a race where it would take me ages to regain my composure, and even after the race and into the next one, where I'd be gutted to have lost rating or ranking points and try to claw them back as soon as I could. But here's a key thing. Rating points come and go. They're not something to focus on race to race, but rather over the long term, and I'll say a bit more about this later. And mistakes happen to everyone. The more races you do, the less that sense of frustration and regret lasts. Unless it's a really crucial race in a league, or you've just thrown away a surprise race win, of course. And if you want proof of why you should try your best early on not to get too hung up on your mistakes, check out the green liveried car that's going to end up on the outside of Graham Hill Bend here, and then go careering across the track into traffic before striking the wall and eventually retiring. That's former BTCC and current British Porsche Carrera Cup Championship leader Dan Camish. If he can get it wrong, then you should definitely give yourself a bit of a break in your early races if you do too. Fast forward a few months and I was well into the second phase of being a sim racer. I was beginning to feel more established and well versed in how Race Room worked. I'd started the YouTube channel and I'd even ran a few races in the LTC Community Porsche Cup Championship. But this shift in attitude, although in part welcome, brought with it some unfortunate side effects too. Let's take a look at a WTCR race that I took part in at the Red Bull Ring in February this year, but which never made it to the channel, as it ends rather pathetically. I dropped down the order early on due to an internet connection dropout, and when my screen unfroze, I found I'd also accumulated 20 incident points, leaving me with, from memory, just 10 more before I'd be disqualified. As you might imagine, I was pretty cross about this and set about trying to reclaim those positions as quickly as I could. After all, I wasn't a rookie anymore, my rating had been building, and I deserved to finish higher. As you can see from this footage, that meant trying some fairly aggressive moves and making a ton of contact with other cars. Now, a bit of rubbing in touring cars is to be expected, but it was pretty daft of me to be racing this hard at this circuit with a DQ hanging over my head. I get away with it for a while and even nail a couple of quite good overtakes. But it's all a bit scrappy, and in the end I'm left attempting an overtake into the final 2 corners of the lap, which in Austria, even in these cars, is pretty ludicrous. And that was that, my first ever DQ and a massive hit to my rating and reputation. As a sidebar, this is also the race that I met my SCB racing community collaborator Chris Rogers on track for the first time. And if you don't already subscribe to Chris on YouTube, you're really missing out. Go check him out from the link in the description. Ultimately, this race encouraged me to reflect a bit on what I was up to in my racing. I was guilty of trying a bit too hard in many sessions around this time, chasing results too much, leading to more accidents and more erratic results. From this moment on, I did become more conscious of the importance of racecraft and my own temperament, aided also by joining iRacing. iRacing has many fanatics, but also many critics, and there's no doubt the experience can be wildly uneven. I've had some of my most enjoyable sim racing moments on iRacing, but also many of the most maddening. And you should definitely check out my USF 2000 races in the top right hand corner of the screen for plenty of both. At the heart of much of that is the extremely punishing damage model and slightly iffy contact detection that can also affect racing. Add in some less than stellar racing standards, especially in the lower tier races, and running side by side with other cars becomes a very risky business. But I actually think that on balance, this is a very good thing. It's taught me to be more measured in how I drive, to think much more about what the other driver might be thinking and how they're racing. And overall, I think that has led to me getting caught up in far fewer incidents as a result. It's read across into how I approach all of my sim racing, whether on iRacing, Race Room or Assetto Corsa. But it doesn't mean I've gone soft and will just wave cars by if I'm coming under pressure, or won't press for an overtake. I'm just much more aware now of where and how I position my car, the signals I'm getting from other drivers around me, and the signals I can give them as we battle. Let's look at an example from a recent battle with top ranked driver Sven Mackenberg on Race Room, who was recovering through the field after an early spin. Now I know he's quicker than me and it's likely that he will pass, so I'm not going to risk my race trying to close him off at every turn. But I am going to try and make it difficult for him and in essence force him to make the pass rather than just drive on through. So I make a clear decision in this instance to stick to the racing line with a view to running around the outside of T1. It's hard to pass down the inside of this corner as you really want to open up the line for the second corner. But if we're running side by side, Sven won't be able to do that easily and I'll have a chance of getting a better exit and still being ahead by the S's. If he does make it past, well, fair enough, I know Sven is the quicker driver and he had the speed to get by. And the approach works, well, at least the first time. Come the next lap he has another go and although we hang it around the outside well again, this time he has just too much for us and he's gone by. In this scenario we lost a position, but that's infinitely preferable to losing several and costing Sven positions too with an overly aggressive defence or by freaking out and leaping out of his way. And the same applies when fighting 4 positions. This is footage from the recent hill climb car race at Spa and reflects the culmination of a 5-lap battle between myself and 2 other drivers, throughout which I'd been gathering intelligence on how each was positioning their cars and when I might be able to make a pass. This was not an overtake that I rushed into. When we get to the end of the Kemmel Straight this time around, I decide to try and make a pass stick. I make it to the inside of the corner and then run side by side throughout the next section of the lap, knowing that if I can just hold it alongside, I'll have the high ground by the time we reach the hairpin. The racing is close but absolutely fair, and of course the other guys involved deserve a big credit for that too. So what does that mean for my sim racing today? More than anything, I think I'm now much clearer of the kind of sim racer that I am. I like to run a whole range of different cars and tracks. I don't like spending ages running practice laps or fine-tuning setups, nor do I have the time. With all of that in mind, I've become quite adaptable, meaning I can get quite comfortable in most combinations of car and circuit pretty quickly, but I'm never going to be at the very front of most online grids, and in race room terms, I'm probably not going to advance much beyond my current high 1.7k or low 1.8k rating, or in iRacing terms, my 1.5k rating. And that's alright. I use these ratings now to help me understand where my pace is likely to be in any given race that I run, and from there I focus on running the best pace that I can, as safely as I can. If 4th place looks like the best finish on offer, then that's what we'll target, and if that doesn't happen, well, that's fine too, providing we have a good, clean battle for it. Although I don't always get it right, I'm comfortable enough in the cockpit now to be able to dedicate more of my concentration and brain power to understanding what's going on around me, what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the drivers that I'm fighting, and how best to position my car to compete fairly and safely with others. In particular, I've learned to be more patient in the attacking and defensive moves that I make. But most of all, I'm clear that I sim race for fun, not because I aspire to compete at an esports level. And ironically enough, that shift in mindset has resulted in my most consistent and positive results in Raceroom and iRacing to date. I'm sure my skills with the wheel and pedal have improved over time, but I'm really convinced the biggest difference has come in my racecraft and my mentality. So there you go, some honest reflections on how I think I've developed as a sim racer in the last 9 months. Let me know in the comments if you found it helpful and if it reflects the kind of experience you've had. And I'll see you next time as I continue to chronicle my progress on the channel.